right, great. Thanks everyone for coming today to our November Municipal Alliance for Adaptive Management meeting. Today we're going to be largely focusing on the review and potential approval of the calendar year 25 MAM budget. We're called to order. We'll go around and introduce ourselves and just state whether you're a voting member. I'll start. Gretchen Young, City of Rochester, and I am a voting member.
Suzanne Woodland, Deputy City Manager and Regulatory Counsel for the City of Portsmouth, and I'm a voting member.
John Storer, voting member, City of Dover, and I am the
Director of Community Services.
yes, thank you. At a loss.
Tim Foltz, City of Dover. I'm the Environmental Project Manager, and I am not a voting.
Daniel McAdam, UNH Stormwater Center. I'm a research engineer and a voting member.
Great, thanks. Sally, I'll throw it to you.
Sure. Sally Soul, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. I am not a voting member.
All right, and Stacy.
Stacy Villanueva, Brown and Caldwell, not a voting member.
And things are moving around on me. Tom Swenson.
Tom Swenson, New Hampshire DES, and I'm a non-voting member.
Great. Clifton.
Clifton Bell with Brown and Caldwell, non-voting.
Great. And Jim.
Jim Steinkraus, Rockdale Pignatelli, non-voter.
Great. And Jamie McCarty.
Jamie McCarty, City of Portsmouth, not a voting member.
Awesome. Thank you. So we do have a quorum here. So we'll move on to approval of minutes for September 26th, 2024.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Any discussion? I will note that the minutes on purpose have been sort of pared down to be pretty brief because they have been recorded as well. So if you have additional questions, you can go to the recordings. All right. Any other discussion? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, approved. All right, moving on to the calendar 25 MAM budget. And I think everyone knows this, but I just want to remind everyone that we do work on a calendar year. We recognize that some communities work on fiscal years and also work on will go to the town meeting. So there is an understanding that sometimes there's a lag in the funding coming in. I think the three largest communities, Rochester, Dover, and Portsmouth, are planning for these funds and can typically begin the work right away. So that is how that's been functioning for the last several years and how it will continue to function next year. So I'm going to pull up just the costs, this cost spreadsheet that was sent out to everyone. Sorry. There we go. Am I able to share a screen? I'm not sure. Let me see. Maybe I am.
You should be able to.
Yep.
I made you the co-host.
Okay, great. But I can do that. Screen and share. Let's. All right, here we go. So we'll start going through the different items on this year's budget. And as you can see, we've got last few years, things move around, but this is basically an outline of what the funding has been for the last several years. I did not send out the memorandum of understanding that was attached. It had an attached cost estimate, but you'll see that these are actually under some of the cost estimates that have been put together when that was created. So the first thing is looking at our consultant, Brown and Caldwell. They have provided, and everyone should have received, the amendment number 4 to their agreement. And again, their agreement is directly with the City of Rochester, who acts as the fiscal agent. But it is on behalf of the Municipal Alliance for Adaptive Management. That is who the client is. And it's for assistance in the prep engagement. So they have acted for years as helping us to review all of the very, very technical work that is being done in the estuary, the scientific research, really interpreting and understanding some of the work that's being done. And I believe have really helped us and helped guide us. So I've reviewed this and I'm certainly in support of the proposal. I open it up to any other questions that folks have.
So I'll just say I've been very satisfied with the work of Brown and Caldwell and be happy to support this as part of the next budget.
I concur. Gretchen, I had one question.
Sure.
We at Ken Edwardson had sent out the update about the pending changes to the ENView water quality regs of 1700. And I don't know if it would be appropriate to ask Brown and Caldwell to do that as a work scope, or if this is more of an item that should fall to each municipality to kind of self-evaluate.
Sure. So I was actually going to cover that under other, but let's go ahead and cover that now. So that I did reach out on behalf of MAM to Brown and Caldwell, and I actually reached out to our Rochester legal counsel, Jim Steincross, to talk about what those regulations really were, how they came about, sort of what they were going after. And I would welcome Jim to chime in if you want to. But my understanding is that these are really site-specific nutrient criteria. So Rochester was and has been involved in this over the last several years because we have that phosphorus impairment. So the idea of doing a site-specific nutrient requirement was something that was important to Rochester. Jim Steincross, over a year ago, or just about a year ago, and his team on behalf of Rochester met with DES, Ted Deers, Aaron Holmes, reviewing a lot of these regulations. And from what I'm understanding is it really allows DES to set up the site-specific nutrient criteria, and that EPA would recognize and adopt what the DES is doing. So it might be alternate criteria to what was in the EPA regulations. And then the other piece is that they sent out aluminum requirements, revised aluminum requirements, but that aluminum is already regulated and it's really changing the state's regulations to jive with what EPA is doing nationally. So
I
it's
remember
like,
there being a disconnect between.
right.
Okay.
So I don't know specifically what those are. And Jim, if you don't mind.
Sure. So actually, I can't take credit. Actually, Clifton prepared
Well, Clifton, that's correct.
draft regulations to allow more flexibility in setting the nutrient limitations and allowing for like a site-specific criteria, and that was related to our appeal and concerns with phosphorus limits in the individual permit issued for the city of Rochester. So what had happened is, in working with DES, Clifton had prepared some draft revisions to the 1700 rules to allow for that, and there was some back and forth with the proposed revisions that Clifton had proposed between DES and EPA, and EPA basically said, well, we're going to basically stick to our limits and the NPDES permit and our provisions. And the workaround was with DES saying in the 1703 and 1704 rules is we'll allow for a site-specific analysis to basically allow for sort of not necessarily relaxed, but different criteria. And the workaround was, EPA said, well, we can just ignore that, right? Well, the way they can't ignore it is if DES finds that that site-specific analysis is valid, and they adopt it through rulemaking. And by adopting it through rulemaking, that opens up the door for, a modification, permit modification. So that's the purpose of the 1704-03 and 1704-04 change. To basically allow for that site-specific analysis. It obviously won't help Rochester with its existing permit now, but the thought was, in the future, it might help with nutrient calculations.
Sounds good to me. So it's not anything we need to wrap into the Brown and Caldwell.
I don't think so, no. I think it is something that Rochester
Yeah.
has worked on because it was pertinent.
Gretchen, are you looking for approval of the proposals one by one, or we're just gonna go through them just?
Yes, if you don't
do it all?
mind for the minutes. I wanna also, for the minutes, note that Ariel Wright from Newington has joined us, and Jake Roger from Epping, the town of Epping, has joined us, both voting members. And Melissa Paley from CLF, our stakeholder committee, has also joined the meeting.
And maybe also that,
Oh, and Paula Mazzo has joined us from PrEP in person. Thank you. Sorry.
If you wanna do them one by one, I'm happy to make a motion
That would be great.
that we collectively approve the Brown and Caldwell scope as
Excellent.
proposed.
second,
All right. Any discussion? All right, then.
Tell Clifton and his crew to keep up the good work.
Yeah,
well,
thank you.
so formally take a vote,
Stacy
let's make
too,
sure.
yeah.
Ariel
Right.
and-
All those in favor, and we're gonna do roll call vote. So I'll start Jake, Roger,
Aye.
Ariel Wright,
Aye.
Suzanne Woodland,
Aye.
John Storer,
Aye.
and Gretchen Young. So that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, next we are going to move on to PTAP. I did distribute an initial PTAP scope. Since then, I've actually worked with Jamie Poole, Sally Sewell to do a few modifications, and it's really just language modifications. I'm gonna pass it out. Very, very minimal, but there were references to work for MS4 communities. You've seen it. Reference to doing work for MS4 communities, all the MS4 communities in the state. It was, the work that they're doing has to do with database. With analyzing land use changes, which is something that we as MAM absolutely need to be doing, because we've been doing the PTAP tracking individual sites, but we haven't been looking at the larger land use modifications. And so just some of the language in the initial scope that I distributed was talking about MS4 communities, and it's been revised to focus on the MAM communities for us. So I will share, let's see, for everyone at home, let's see, stop share. I'm gonna share a different screen here. Are you guys seeing the PTAP or are you still seeing? No, you're not. Okay, hold on. It's harder than it looks. Here we go. Share. PTAP work. Share. You see PTAP work now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just rolling down, so it'll still be a $50,000 cost, which is what we've been doing over the last several years. As you know, the folks at PTAP last number of years have really been doing a lot of hand-holding with the communities to help them get used to entering information into the database. A lot of that work's been done, although there's still some work to do with different communities. Some it's really taken off and some still need some help. But then also they're adding, this is the objective one, is to technical assistance that we've had for the last several years. Objective number 2 is to continue to develop the reporting tools, which we've done for the last several years as well. And then this is objective number 3. Here we get into these hotspot mapping. This is what I'm talking about. So they're adding, working with NHDES and UNH will work together to do these large hotspot mappings and to evaluate long-term trends associated with the land use changes and the results of pollutant loading trends. Which I think we have been putting off that larger scope for a number of years, but I think it's time to be able to address the larger land use adjustments. And Sally, I'd welcome you to chime in and elaborate on any of that I just.
No, I think that's good, Gretchen. I think the hotspot maps, it'll be sort of an upgrade from that earlier sort of piloty type product that we
Yeah.
did years ago. So this will be kind of new and improved mapping. And I would also welcome Daniel to weigh in a little bit on that too, if he wants to.
Okay.
But it's really just going to be an upgrade to that product and hopefully more user friendly and, you know, just new information. So updated.
But at the end of it, we're gonna be seeing land use changes because the argument is that
Yeah,
we're tracking
correct.
the reductions, but we aren't necessarily tracking the whole larger picture. And this is,
Yes.
yeah, and sorry, Daniel.
Yeah,
I'll speak to that.
and in the PTAP database, there is a section currently for land use change, but it's pretty clunky, and that's also site specific.
Yes.
We're not seeing the larger trends.
Right.
So the goal is, like you said, to put together the site changes with the large scale mapping, which we can do regionally and like at a municipal scale. So it's broader and it'll cover true long-term trends.
Yeah, long-term trends.
Which too, Gretchen, as you mentioned, it's something we've talked about for a long time in various PTAP meetings to do it at that regional scale. So this will really enable us to kind of dig into that. So finally, to track land use change regionally.
Just a quick thing to add to that is it'd be done with publicly available and free federal data. The benefit of that is it's updatable.
Mhm.
So next time there's new data set out, you can just update the entire set. So it's not dependent on, when there's staff turnover and who's putting in PTAP information or if the methods change of how it's getting put into PTAP. So this will be really, it's more resilient long term. So.
All right, any questions? Great, then do you have a motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to make a motion that we accept the PTAP proposal as outlined from Jamie Hall for 50 grand for calendar year 2025.
Second.
All right. Then any discussion? All right, then roll call vote, Jake Roger.
It's muted, I don't know if it's aware.
Maybe we can come back to him. Ariel Wright. Sally, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear
Okay.
you, Gretchen. Yep.
I've got
and
something on
clear.
my screen that's saying low system resources, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing something.
can hear
I've
you
got too
loud and
much
clear.
open. So Ariel? Okay. Well, Suzanne Woodland?
Yes.
John Storer?
Yeah,
And Gretchen Young is a yes. We do have a majority vote, so we're gonna go ahead and move on. Thank you. Okay, this next one, I am gonna ask Daniel to elaborate a little bit on. It's a build on to, so it's kind of a next step. One-time cost that has to do with PTAP and those of us who have actually used PTAP. And Jamie McCarty gets credit because he is the #1 user and is really trying to push the limits of how it can be used, which is awesome. But he runs into the issue that you really can't just run you can't use your information, run an analysis and get information easily because there's this very clunky overlap into what EPA has developed, called the BAT. It stands for BMP Accounting and Tracking Tool. So, for a long time, we've talked about taking all of the performance curves, all of the information that the EPA has created, which is what's in our MS4 permit and, pollutant loading, but to put it into a more user-friendly PTAP specific management algorithm. And so to do that, it is going to take some effort on the part of Daniel McAdam, who's here, to do that crosswalk. And Daniel, I don't know if you want to speak to any of the work that would go into that.
Yeah, it's kind of building off of the task 2 from the PTAP, which is the tracking, accounting, reporting. So it's really trying to make a better updatable and easy accessible accounting tool. So that, like I said, anybody can go in and run a report, as well as we constantly have updating credits. So like wastewater was new this year. Last year we were looking at street sweeping a lot. And those are not in the BAT tool, which was actually released in 2016 and hasn't really been updated, and it's not.
It spells New Hampshire incorrectly.
The original,
There's
New Hampshire is spelled wrong, so nobody in this room can run it unless you get the backdoor to correct those issues. So that's what we have been using because it's an EPA accredited tool. And that was really a stepping stone to get into this process. So we want to, like I said, take the performance curves, which are the basis of all of this crediting, and just build a better tool for PTAP. It's the big goal.
All right, any questions or discussion?
I know this is something we've talked about for a long time, about trying to extract more of the data and building the curves, putting all the pieces in one place so we can really analyze and see, and the public can more easily see, and the stakeholders, what is actually being delivered as part of this effort. So I think it's an investment we need to make to absolutely get the full benefit of all the data we're entering and the changes we're making. Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I'm just a little sensitive. I'm hoping if Jake or Ariel have any comments, just want to make sure they're still with us, but I concur. Sounds like it's a long overdue correction that's necessary, so. Jake or Ariel, if you can hear us, are you still with us? We're seeing on the screen that you're both muted.
Jamie McCarty, could I ask you to email them just to see?
Sure.
Thanks so much. See if something's going on there. Another really cool thing, I get kind of sidetracked, but I like to say this, this is a way, once this happens, you can start using the PTAP tool to check your site plan applications, which is what Jamie's been doing, and it's really it's gonna really expand the functionality of the work we're doing beyond just what MAM is doing, so. All right. Is there a motion?
I would motion to include the traditional scope of work for the PTAP credit report tool in the amount of $35,000.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that. Oh, there it is.
Hey, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
That's the problem with not going in person, is you get sidetracked.
Yeah, it happens. We just wanted to make sure that if you did have comments, we were acknowledging them.
Nope, we're all set.
Okay. Then we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Then we'll do a roll call vote. Jake Roger,
Aye.
Ariel Wright. I think may also be off. All right, Susan Woodland.
Aye.
John Storer.
Aye.
And Gretchen Young, yes. So we are good for that. Thank you, Daniel. That'll be a lot of screen time for you, so that sounds fun.
A witch project.
All right. On to our rep work. So the next is the way that prep has broken up their funding is, and they've done this for the last several years, they've got the credit reporting modifications, the core monitoring and oversight, then there's continuation of previous studies, new proposals, and you'll see we have no new proposals this year, and then the contingency. And folks may remember that Brown and Caldwell has a whole process that they work with Cullen and his team. So Cullen's putting together proposals. Those go to Brown and Caldwell, they review in keeping with what MAM's objectives are and what our nitrogen permit objectives are, because prep work is not necessarily to meet permit compliance, right? But MAM is kind of piggybacking on the work that they're doing. So the document that was distributed came from Brown and Caldwell and outlines the work that prep has been doing and is proposing to do. So I think it's worth going down some of this, actually going down these items, because it's good for us to talk about them once a year and really know what's going on out there. You'll see some cost changes. So if there's questions, Kala is here to answer those questions. So the first one is the Tier 1 seagrass monitoring.
Gretchen,
Yes,
can I make an overall comment?
please.
If you look at this document, you're gonna see that in most cases, the 2025 request is higher than 224. And in most cases, that's because UNH has changed its indirect rate. We used to be a 0% indirect rate.
Which is unheard of.
Which is unheard of, and when they started having budget problems a couple of years ago, they basically did an overall review of all their indirect rates. And said that starting this year, this is the first year that you've gotten this indirect rate is 26%. And now all of our rates are the same. When we work with DES, it's 26%. The EPA money that comes in is 26%. So in fact, without that, our 2025 request is less than our 2024 request. And the only exception to that in these first 6 rows is estuarine water quality monitoring we are asking for more this year. We're actually doing the same amount of monitoring as we've done in the past, but in the past, we've used our EPA fund to pay for more of that. And we took some of that funding in this last year and used it. Prep is doing a lot more community engagement than it used to. We've hired 2 new people. And so we've used some of our EPA money to pay for those new communication efforts. And I do not see those costs going up any further in future years, except to keep up with inflation. But if that is too big of a increase, you know, we're happy to talk about it, but that's how we needed to get it funded this year. Gretchen, you asked me a question and you said, why is EPA doing it? It wasn't EPA, it was PREP.
Okay.
So PREP looked at its budget and said, if we're gonna spend more money on community engagement and getting all of this good data out there to people and talking to them about what it means, then that's gonna have to come from somewhere else. I am asking MAM to pay for more, but it was in the context that we're actually asking you. When I set this up for less money, but then with the indirect rate, it ends up being a healthy ask. So this is obviously, I know that I believe I'll let Clifton and Stacy speak to this, that they felt technically that these are viable requests, but of course the money question is really your decision.
Can I ask you another general question? And it's always out there and it's maybe not the best, but are other communities, non-MAM member communities, continuing to contribute at these potentially higher rates due to the cost shifting and stuff like that? How is that working?
So we are still in the process. They are also going to be subject to that 26% that new this year as well.
Can I spin that, Cullen? Would you for whatever reason, I like the group dynamic. If my understanding is Somersworth makes a direct contribution and Durham does, would you care if we lumped them in and it made it part of MAM? Would that have the same impact? I
No
just-
problem with us, I know that
Wouldn't-
Somersworth, and I know you've spoken to this, John, that you feel like should be discussed why Somersworth and Durham are not in the MAM. We have no preference. I think that their choice to not be part of the MAM has something else, has to do with
No,
other
I think
things.
there are other issues that
Yeah.
hopefully have kind of gone by the
But we
wayside,
wouldn't-
but I just
we're
believe
fine
in
with
the
it.
collective strength of the group, you know, coming together, discussing everything, you know, we could have Somersworth and Durham in the room going through this all, and I think it would add to the strength of what we're doing. So if it's not an issue for you, it helps me just try to maybe formulate how I would talk to somebody like Mike Babinski, the new city manager.
Not an issue for us.
Defending Somersworth.
Yeah, and then the
That's
other-
good.
The other town that regularly, well, they took a hiatus, but I think they're gonna contribute again is Stratham. Though some of you know that we are trying to rejuvenate the sort of a municipal collaborative so that we can get, we don't really feel that it's fair for just the folks who have this total nitrogen permit to be the only ones contributing. So we're trying to rejuvenate this municipal collaborative process. Some of you were part of our meeting recently. And our hope is that in a couple of years, that people will see the value of it and we can start making more pointed requests, can you please contribute? Right now, we have the money from the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is helping us a little bit, but that goes away 2027. And so our plan is come 2027, we want to make a harder push to people. Have we showed you value for what we do? Would you mind contributing? Because you're part of the watershed.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
I have to say, something like this handy summary. You know, and then we talk in detail about what you actually get for this work product and this investment, I think has been invaluable, I hope, not only for Portsmouth, but for the other communities. And, you know, if we talk about, particularly as you have funding disappearing in certain places, as we go back out and reach out to the other communities, MAM and non-MAM, so to speak. You know, maybe this kind of format or a special invitation to say, hey, you know, when we look at our, you know, the total scientific tasks we'd like to accomplish with PrEP, why don't we sit around a bigger table? We know what we're looking at and the questions we ask, and maybe that would help. So maybe not for this year, but as we think about.
Yeah.
Is there a way to kind of show it?
Yeah.
Because it's so nice here, and then we have a little spreadsheet and you can see the other communities' contributions and how they track, so.
Portions.
Yeah, so maybe next year we can find a way to tee that up.
I really appreciate working with Brown and Caldwell. I appreciate this table they put it, it's really nice. And they bring a lot of technical, really excellent technical suggestions and questions to the process, so it's a really great process. When the BIL money goes away, our budget changes significantly. And so what we have built in, and I mentioned this to Clifton and Stacy, is in the next year or two, we're gonna have to have a meeting, a collective meeting to say, because right now, we get 850 from our base funding, 909 from BIL, and between 400 and 450 from the MAM, 115 from DES. Well, 909 of that is going away when BIL runs out. And most of the BIL money has been spent on science as opposed to other things. So I think at that time, we're gonna have to have a collective discussion about, because we're not gonna be able to fund everything that we've been funding.
Question, when you do go to like a Somersworth Newmarket, are they funding, I know like Newmarket, for example, funded data science or like specific things, are they funding these specific things, or is it just sort of a contribution?
So Newmarket is a special case in that they gave us a sonde.
Yeah.
And so that has been their contribution. And so every year we say, okay, what's the value of that sonde, and it depreciates, so their contribution goes down every year, and we might have to look at that again. Stratham and Durham both say, spend the money as you will.
Okay.
Somersworth likes to know exactly what. So we found what's a $15,000 chunk that is easy to just cut off, and then I can go back and report to them.
So I think that'll help you.
Yeah, and
if you have
it gives me
something.
some insight. I really can't stress enough. I think all of us coming together in the same room to discuss is some benefit and strength in that, making sure we're unified in how we're approaching things.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the opportunity exists to strengthen MAM in the coming year, add a few more members, as long as it's not gonna impact what you're already doing, so.
I feel like MAM has only an added benefit. That's what I've said to people. It's a great group, as you say. We bring all of our concerns here, or all of our concerns. And again, Brown and Caldwell has been really excellent addition to just the thought process of what are we gonna do?
And then, John, I've been thinking, you had mentioned this at the other meeting, we did maybe 2 years ago, we developed a whole letter. And then I reached out to each one of the communities with them, so I'll resend that to you
Yeah,
if you
and-
want to read up.
And I can just attest, I think sometimes, as Suzanne knows, I mean, sometimes the pace of what you're dealing with day in and day out, some things just fall by the wayside.
For sure.
And I'd venture a guess that if Todd Selig or Mike Babinski or Bob Belmore were here and we discussed openly why they chose not to join, we could easily address that. And it's like a different time, it's a different change, it's a different state of where we're at. And we really are trying to unify what we're doing. So I think it would be easy to get them back on board. It just probably haven't reapproached them, so.
Okay, all right, so any more general questions before we dive into the tasks? Because I again do think it's a worthwhile time spent. Okay, so our tier 1 seagrass monitoring, continuation of the annual aerial imagery mapping of the seagrass. That is absolutely essential, I think. I mean, we need to know what's going on there. We've been really kind of tying our success to seagrass for a long time. So I think continuing to understand how that is changing is worth it. The estuarine water quality monitoring, this is the one that Cullen was pointing out that there is kind of a substantial jump here because of the shifting around of internal funding needs. As Cullen mentioned, that some of the funds that had been going to this are now going to public outreach. And of course, public outreach is a goal of MAM's as much as anything. So I don't think it's that the funding is now going to something that contradicts what we are also trying to do. So that made sense to me, but I'm open to other conversations. The light array program. This is something that our consultants, I believe, really have seen value in, talking a lot about how the light is in the light column in the Great Bay and how that may be impacting the performance of the seagrass and the water quality. And so that is a continuation of that program.
Yeah, Gretchen, I'm 100% supportive of everything. I just, if Cullen could explain the light array, how it's tying into the modeling effort. I assume they go hand in hand down below that. To have a good bio-optical model, you must have to have a lot of field arrays and monitors to make sure, so it's just building on that.
Yes, and I'll, if Stacy and Clifton want to jump in, that's fine too, but the thing that the light array gives you that you don't get from all the other work that has been funded by the MAM, most of the light work we do is the standard monitoring is we go out once a month. And so obviously your light is changing way more often than once, it's a very coarse measurement. And then all this bio-optical work has been done by a researcher at UNH named Atsushi. And so he's going out and doing more studying and trying to understand light even better. But the light array, these are 3 locations throughout the estuary, 1 in Portsmouth Harbor, 1 near the General Sullivan Bridge, and 1 in Great Bay. And it's taking light measurements every 15 minutes. And so you're starting to get an idea of, well, how much do these dynamics shift? I believe it's unclear whether that light array program will stick around when we get to 2028. But I think it's really helpful to have 4 or 5 years of this data so that we can add this to Atsushi's model So we really understand how much does this vary in a day? I think that Atsushi has been coming out. We looked at a little bit of this data with Clifton and Stacy on a recent call. And we're starting to see how the light array data differs from other data, and it is very helpful. I don't know that it'll stick around when we have to tighten our belts a little bit. But I think it's been really helpful for the last 3 years and maybe for another 1 or 2 years.
Maybe Stacy or Clifton could speak a little bit further to that.
Yeah, the combination of the different types of monitoring that are being done really give you a good both spatial and temporal coverage. So the light arrays give you great temporal coverage, but at certain points. The other piece to this, which is Atsushi's work, is using remote sensing data to predict light characteristics from reflectance, and that gives you a great spatial coverage. So between the grab sampling, the light array, and the bio-optical model, the vision is we'll have both good spatial and temporal coverage and can really understand the light dynamics. And I'd say the fact that these light arrays might go away is even better reason to get that bio-optical model up and running. Of course, it needs to be trained validated against data collected in the field. But once you have good statistical confidence in that model, we might be able to afford to go out some of those other types of data and use something like that bio-optical model to continue to estimate, light conditions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. I think that we're taking a little bit of a calculated risk as a group. Clifton knows more about this than I do. He's studying light in lots of different estuaries, maybe Stacy as well. There are a lot of people who are trying to approach this very challenging topic of being able to characterize light dynamics. And you've invested a lot of funding in this bio-optical model. And it's because I think we have a shot at doing something really cool here. And we might end up being a little bit the envy. But it's ambitious. But so far, what Atsushi has reported back to me is that it's looking good. So.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
By looking good, you mean looking informative?
Yeah, it's like the model could actually come, every model is wrong, but some are useful.
Yeah, but looking useful.
It's looking useful.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, moving on to the external advisors. So here's my question. The external advisors were part of the Fieldgrass project, correct?
Well, external advisors have been something PREP has been trying to do since 2016, 2017.
Okay.
And just to make sure that, especially between 2010 and 2020, there was so much your science, my science going on. When I came to PREP, I felt it was really important to get scientists involved who didn't have a horse in the race.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have been doing that since 2017. Then when that Eelgrass Resilience Project started in 2021, we brought them into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they kind of, although the cast has changed a little bit, we've lost some, and Judd Kenworthy is the only one who's been around from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
This is a concept that I'm deeply committed to, and will always try to have. I learn a tremendous amount from them, and I think it increases our credibility to have people who can say, no, Kala, you're not looking at this right.
Okay. So is that kind of the level of, because like we have Brown and Caldwell who are really combing through information, and certainly to a higher cost than this, right?
Right.
So the external advisors are kind of just bringing hey, did you think of this? Or we're seeing similar trends, or, is that kind of
what the external advisors are?
Yeah, I have been thinking though that in some cases, it might be. It might be worth it to work with them even in a more concentrated way.
Okay.
Because as you say, we're not investing in them as much as you're investing in Brown and Caldwell. And some of the things that I've tried to accomplish with other people has been challenging. And I'm thinking, maybe I should switch some of those resources over to the external advisors who have, really, really tremendous experience in some of these really complicated things like water quality modeling and really figuring out, well, how much of this is nitrogen versus sediments versus temperature, right? And sea level rise. So I've been thinking that number might need to change. I don't think I would ask you all to put up more money. I would find it from other resources.
So what will the external advisors be reviewing this year? All of the stuff that we're talking about, since they're not part of the.
Yeah, essentially, this eelgrass resilience project just ended.
Right.
And the So What report is going out,
Right.
and Stacy and Clifton provided a lot of great comment on that. But that So What report only deals with 2021, 2022,
Correct.
2023.
Right.
And what was really great about this project is everybody was like, that's cool and everything, but shouldn't that be talked about in context of what we've seen since the early 80s?
Yeah.
In terms of eelgrass and stressors. So PREP said, okay, fine. This NOAA project is ending, but we are now going to integrate those 3 years into a historical analysis that we hope is going to come out in 2025. And I'm going to use the external advisors a lot for that. In fact, we have a meeting that I scheduled with Stacy and Clifton and the external advisors for January to get that going.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Thank you for the.
All right, any other question on that? Okay, tier 2 seagrass model, monitoring.
So that just means, whereas tier 1 is, you're looking at everything from very high up.
Right.
You see where the grass is and where it's not, but you don't really know anything about the grass. Tier 2, we go to 25 sites throughout the estuary, from Portsmouth all the way up to Great Bay. And we say, well, how dense is it? What's the biomass? How much seaweed are we saying? How much organic matter is in the sediment? So it's kind of, you're starting to dig in more details, but not as spatially comprehensive.
And Anna, and I can't think of her last name, although it changed halfway through, right?
Anna McCoulis.
Yeah, she had been doing a fair amount of that work. Was she doing that work through her PhD work?
She was using that work, so that data is collected by folks at Jackson Lab.
Gotcha.
She was using that data for the Eelgrass Resilience Project, which is also her PhD.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I got that.
So that will keep going, so it goes tier 1, tier 2.
Yep.
And then tier 3 is not, we're not asking you to pay for that, I think that's being paid for by EPA. I don't see it here, so it must be.
Yeah, we're not doing.
Yeah, so tier 3 is just that, so you've gone from the whole estuary to 25 sites. Tier 3 is just 2 sites, one in Great Bay and one in Portsmouth Harbor, with even more detail. Plus, it's the exact same place every year. I mean, because it's marked, and you're going to the exact same square inch and going, hey, wait, there was this much grass last year and now there isn't. And we're getting that funding from EPA.
Yep.
So you get Tom Gregory, is Laura Martin, UNH student working with Tom? Or
She's his kind of head scientist. She's the COO of everything. She manages all the operations, schedules the divers, gets the boats, goes out with us, takes our tanks and lifts them out of the water. She does everything.
Okay, fun job.
Yeah, she likes it.
Cool. Okay, we've talked a bit about the monitoring. And moving on to we do nothing on storm add-ons to eelgrass stressors this year.
Yeah, so everything else is past investments.
Past investments.
And I don't think that you're gonna see on any of these us coming back to you for more, unless you see tier 3 seagrass. It's possible the way the jigsaw puzzle gets put together some year, you might be asked to pay for that. But that's not the way it's gone down usually. So these are all really past investments.
Okay.
Which I will say these two here at the bottom of page 1, storm add-on and tributary discharge. I spoke with the lab that's doing that work.
Mhm.
And we feel pretty confident that we'll be able to bring those results to you in the April timeframe of 2025 and report back to you pretty comprehensively on both of those. The data is still in, they're trying to maybe capture one more storm, because as you know,
Yeah.
2024 was not very stormy. Hasn't been a lot of, so crazy, because we set up the Eelgrass project hoping for not storms, and we got completely flooded. And then we set up the storm project and we didn't get a lot of storms, so
Well,
that's the way it works.
okay, interesting. Well, I like that we keep this in here because I think the storm is interesting information, so we'll keep revisiting it.
It's super important because you can track sediment loading, we could add that and track sediment loading the same way we do nitrogen loading, but what everybody says about sediment is. If you're just gonna track that through monthly, surface gauges and monthly, you're gonna miss so much because so much sediment comes in on the storms. Which is a little different, a little bit different from the nitrogen story.
Well, just to share an observation, I didn't want to dwell in on the light, but I was gonna share, it's like Color thinks we're not gonna do light monitoring. I just share an observation, the Cocheco River in Dover, during a high intensity rainfall, it is hugely depressing. You get a line of demarcation of heavily sedimentation coming by, it's just like, holy cow. It's as black and white as you can ever see.
Yeah.
And so in the back of my mind, I said, I think we're gonna be focusing on light attenuation more, and the fact that you've talked about storm impacts and monitoring the incoming tributary discharges, I think we're on the right track. I think that's gonna be an avenue. It's like, wow, we had no idea.
Yeah.
It's depressing to see.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I would agree that that is a line of like a conversation that isn't really in the total nitrogen general permit, but I think it is super important. I mean, you can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're fixating on the nitrogen, but I think we're gonna see the negative impact of the sediments.
Right.
I mean, there's gonna be a surrogate, you get nitrogen in there, but just the sheer murkiness of the water is depressing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not a scientific term, is it? Murkiness, light attenuation.
We use something,
Yeah.
a lot more, hoity-toity, like turbidity, like,
Yeah.
I like murkiness. I mean, 2023. The water was so murky that even phytoplankton couldn't grow. And phytoplankton doesn't need a lot of light. It's high up in the water column and it just doesn't need a lot of light to grow, unlike seagrass. But in 2023, the murkiness was so high that's, first of all, there was very little seaweed and there was very little phytoplankton.
There's not a
So,
lot of eelgrass either.
that was the year we lost
Yeah.
so much eelgrass.
And then the next one, the tributary discharge measurements, I wanna say, isn't that an actual requirement right from the total nitrogen general permit that we'd be doing that? Which I think it's fine, because it seems like you're still doing it. But
So no, this was just that, we currently have 3 out of the 7 tributaries gauged. So we have really accurate data on discharge, and so I think it was, I don't know, I think if it came from the MAM or the environmental management, adaptive management plan, you wanted to know, well, how are these non-gauged tributaries doing in comparison? And so that's what that work was, and that's why it's so low, is they're basically doing a quick comparison to see, can we use what we've done on these other gauged sub watersheds? And does it actually check out when you move them over? So that's what we should be able to get some good presentation on in the April timeframe.
okay. All right, that sounds good. I just wanted to make sure, because I do think that was something EPA was really
Yeah,
interested.
maybe it did come from
Yeah.
EPA, I can't remember.
All right, moving on,
That's pretty much it. Everything else is in the
Yeah.
past.
okay.
I mean, if you want to go through them, I'm happy to.
Nope, well, I mean, it still is interesting because, okay, macroalgae, that we don't have to go too much into that. That's talking about. You had a seaweed workshop held in January,
But those funds have not yet been expended.
okay,
And it's possible that that money can then be used for something else. We're still trying to figure out. The story on seaweed we're still trying to get our heads around it. We made some good progress in January, but we still have more work to do. And so we have a couple of things that are pending in 2025. report on light and a report on seaweed. And then the shoreline hardening survey, that's money that we got in 2023. The person who was going to do that left DES, so it's taken them a while to get a new person. That's gonna be done by the end of 2025, so that's actually another deliverable for
Oh, great.
2025.
So it's gonna
Okay,
be a
so
lot
still-
next year.
Yeah, it should be a lot next year.
Because that's gonna fall into some of this erosion and things like that I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, it has a huge effect on light and water temperature and nitrogen uptake. In Chesapeake Bay, they've found that shoreline hardening has had a huge impact on what different things will grow, what types of seagrass will grow. So it's pretty important.
Okay. All right, moving down, just really quick, we have no, unless people wanna go through, we've sort of talked about the tier 3, we talked about the water quality monitoring, Muscle Watch, do you have any update on that?
So Muscle Watch is, you look at the flesh of blue mussels and then you analyze it for toxic contaminants. They essentially integrate toxic contaminants out of the water and in the sediments. And we feel like toxic contaminants has been underfunded, toxic contaminants monitoring. So we've made a commitment to give Steve Jones, who does that work, $40,000 a year. That money has all come from the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Okay.
So what, if we can keep that up, starting 2028 remains to be seen, but we would like to.
Okay, cool. And then the non-structural BMP expert panel, which was the work that Jamie Gould was doing. Nothing came of the catch basin cleaning stuff, but we were looking into, do you know the answers to some of the like fertilizers and things like that he was looking into?
Don't and
Well, I believe that report was, I sent it around to Stacy and Clifton, and I think that report was completed.
It's all complete.
So,
Apologize if I shouldn't have that.
yeah, well, no, maybe it hasn't been disseminated sufficiently. But
I do think the report's complete.
Yeah.
I don't know how far it's gone after that.
yeah, and I think that what they said was that there wasn't enough,
Well, there wasn't with the catch basin.
but there was with fertilizer.
Right,
So that's a topic that is out there now is, should we try and do an expert panel around fertilizers? I talked to Abigail about it just today and she said that would be probably a $70,000 to $80,000 ask. That's how much the expert panels have been costing.
Yep.
So,
okay. So
but it's not there yet. I didn't
It's
ask
not there
for it
Gotcha.
because it's not mature enough yet and we're still trying to figure it out.
Okay. All right, good enough. So we'll keep that in our list of things because it may be worth revisiting. And then I noticed we don't have any contingency this year.
Actually, I think it might be. Oh, did that get left out? Stacy and Clifton, did we leave that out on accident? No contingency funds?
It's in this one.
It is in that one.
It was, yeah, it's not in what you provided us, Color. We had the 26% and an inflation increase, but you did not use the contingency for this year.
You know what? I created that spreadsheet a little while ago, so let me just double check what that contingency.
Yeah, it says
5%.
That's 5%, I think, of the total. Let me double check.
Rich, you just an accounting thing on this summary sheet.
Yep.
The 641 total, it looks like we're using a leftover credit of 8,000
Yep.
from this year. I just want to make sure I understood. So
Yep.
when the proposed, so that number will write that. So it may be that the 641 is giving prep a 22.5 contingency.
Double check that 22.5 is just from prep. So yep, I put the contingency in this one, not in the prep. Not in here. So yes, the total that was sent out from the spreadsheet did include a contingency, but this one, this spreadsheet does not have a contingency. Do we think it's appropriate to have that 22,000 contingency?
I'll be honest with you, part of the reason for the contingency was that we were a little bit we were a little bit cut to the bone because there was 0%.
Yeah.
Now with 26%, that means
Okay.
there's some return coming to my, it's called PI account. So I'm not feeling that it's as necessary.
The only reason I like to have it is because we internally, have, like, we're down to 8,000, these are big numbers, we got down to 8,000 this year. It's not like we don't really have this like buffer in MAM.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So even if it's just us to have a little buffer that just carries over to the next year, it's.
I would leave it up to you. I feel like that was an oversight on my part. I'm not feeling the need for the 5% contingency as much as when there was 0% overhead.
Okay.
Because it gets now covered in a different way.
Gretchen, I would echo, I was jumping ahead to Dover's contribution and we can cover what you have listed for Dover's contribution. And that would include the contingency. So it's more like, well, if I can fit it within our budget, better to have it and not need it. But I want to be sensitive to our other partners. I mean, if they're up against a fiscal hurdle and have to cut it, maybe we should talk about that. But I would advocate keep it in and just hope we don't have to use it.
I would similarly advocate to keep it in and not use it and have it as a buffer, because it's not like we're not like a community that it's much harder to, if something goes over or something, you know, there's no buffer. But I agree, I'd certainly be interested to hear what other communities have to say. It doesn't look like Jake's here. Ariel.
I'm not sure we will be able to hear from them, but I'm comfortable, in 2 points. I don't know if you're ready for the motion, but I would be happy to support Prep's proposal as is, with specifically accounting for the 5% contingency that we have underlined, because again, it fits within what we can swing for our budget, and happy to support the word.
Is that a motion?
I will formally make that motion.
Thank you.
I can second it.
Any discussion? All right, then I'm going to take a roll call vote, and it looks like we've lost our representative from Epping, so I'm going to go to Newington. Ariel, right?
Yes.
And Ariel, did you have anything you wanted to add regarding this contingency discussion?
No, nothing comes to mind.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Suzanne Woodland?
Aye.
John Storr? Gretchen Young? Aye. Great conversation, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all of the good information. And that is our total budget for calendar year 25. Do folks feel comfortable taking a vote on the total budget? We've approved everything that was submitted.
Yeah, I'm happy to make that motion, Gretchen, and I think we've approved all the individual things.
Yep.
I guess working off the summary sheet, I make a motion that we adopt the budget in the aggregate of 641, 173 and 52 cents, recognizing that we are going to use a surplus from 2024 of 8,078 cents.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Susan Woodland. All right, any discussion? Then we'll do roll call vote. Ariel, right?
Yes.
Suzanne Woodland,
Yes.
John Storr,
Aye.
and Gretchen Young. Yes, that is unanimous. So, great, thank you guys. So I don't see a need for a follow-up meeting this year. I'll go ahead and do the work because Rochester is the fiscal agent. We will work with our council to approve that, and we'll get some bills, invoices sent out to everyone to move forward. All right, on to other business and updates. Under other business, I have to note the kind of low turnout we have here among MAM members. So I think we need to do a concerted effort to make sure that we're getting everyone, Milton, Exeter, some of those folks. I just want to make sure that we're hearing from everyone. So I will reach out, but if other folks are having conversations with them, and then like John has said, also kind of talking to some of the other communities that are facing a lot of the same challenges we have, whether it's other regulated communities or just other communities that might be interested in the work that we're doing. So I don't have anything formal to say about that, but I think we should all kind of have that on our radar. Any other business? All right, stakeholder comment. And it looks like Melissa Paley is no longer part of the meeting. So she's our stakeholder committee member.
So she had to pop off for another meeting.
She did, okay. Well, I have not heard any comments from her ahead of time, so we'll say no stakeholder comment. Any public comment? Seeing no one from the public, we'll move on. Look, I've got other business in here twice, and I think I can take that out. All right, scheduled next meeting and agenda items. So we will not have another budget meeting this year. I think the next meeting would be, we typically have one in January, or actually February, to do a 6-month check-in. It'll be a little bit more than 6 months of our annual progress. And then, maybe regroup and see what projects we want to do and how we're moving on into the summer months. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we'll do something in February. Do we want to schedule it right now?
Sure, and Thursday is a good day of the week, Thursday afternoons work well, Richard.
I think Suzanne said it might too.
And then just for an agenda topic, while we're chatting about it, maybe we kind of make it sort of a membership focus.
Yeah.
It's like invite a municipality to the meeting. I just wrote a note to call Mike Babinski. And with Exeter, they have a new public works director, and I'd have to look up his
He
name.
has
I've met with him a
attended.
couple of times.
Right, and
Paul. Right? Yeah, I can look it up. I'm embarrassed. I've had coffee with him. But I think I've made a note to try to call Mike Babinski, and then I thought Paul Vlasic was finally easing out as Exeter finally had a new public works director. So that was my impression of it.
yeah, it's not Paul, and I can't think of the name.
But you know who else might,
Steve
person?
Cronin, I think it's Steve
Yes.
Cronin.
Oh, that's who it is.
Yeah, Steve Cronin.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And I think he's had a massively full plate because he's trying to get acclimated. So-
For sure, and I know that that's true in Milton as well. But I do want to make sure that, this collaboration, is happening, so. All right, let's see, let me put my schedule. Let's see, February, do we want to do, I'm open any Thursday in February.
I think
Just
my
avoid
recommend,
the school vacation weeks.
And I don't know which ones they are, unfortunately.
Usually the third and fourth weeks. I don't know, Maine
I
and New
agree.
Hampshire stagger, and I have a
Yeah.
daughter impacted by one and a wife impacted by the other. So
Okay, you want to do the 13th then?
that 13 sounds like a lucky number to me.
All right, then we'll do February 13th at 1 o'clock, and I'm happy to continue it here. It seems like it's a good location for folks, but
Yeah, I'm happy to swing up. Maybe we try to do some outreach, get a few more people.
yep. All right, then motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you, Suzanne.
Second,
All right, and roll call, Ariel, right?
Yes.
All right, Suzanne Woodland,
Aye.
John Store, and Gretchen Young, yes. All right, thank you everyone so much. Have a great rest of your year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Gretchen.
You bet, Ariel.